Hello there, and welcome to Pitch Black Beacon, episode 2, where our station is a light to our listeners in overcoming obstacles in their pursuit to a more fulfilling life. This is your host, Carly, and I'm here with Joshua, my co-host, and today we're going to talk about the origins of success and the mental shifts and the mindset awareness that has to happen in order to start you on your journey of a successful life. So, pretty excited to be here today, Joshua, talking about this. We've kind of discussed this a couple of times over the last several months, but especially in the last week.
Yeah, definitely. One of the main takeaways for this, for me, I like this one because this has this has been where I was stuck for a really long time in my pursuit of success, and the things that stopped me and how I overcame them are some of the things we'll talk about today. So I'm kind of excited for this one.
I'm excited too. And it's so funny because I think we all view success in a different way, right? Like what's successful to one person might not look like success to another, and vice versa. And then also like what we prioritize along that success journey, is a very individualized journey, right? And two people could do very different things and get the same results, and two people could do the exact same thing and also get very different results. So it's kind of a fun thing because there's no like one shoe fits all. There's a lot of roadmaps, there's a lot of guidelines, and a lot of default things that you can be doing in that roadmap, but letting go of comparison on that success journey is going to be definitely key in liberating yourself to truly unlock your potential with your success. So
Most definitely. And I think another thing to add to that is what I notice a lot of people do is this stuns a lot of success and a lot of forward progress, and it's resting on your laurels. When
mm,
you rest on what you've done in the past and you've said, "Oh, I've accomplished so much," or "I've done this already," or "I've read this already," or "I've seen this already," well, you've already set yourself up for a negative um, impact on yourself and a negative thought to progress forward with the things that you want to do, because you've already taken it upon yourself to tell yourself that, oh, I've already done this, so I don't have to do this, or I'm not open to learning and I'm closed-minded. And that's kind of where resting on your laurels gets you trapped in your pursuit to success.
so when you first talked to me about like laurels and resting on your laurels, like just to kind of reiterate it, because when I first heard it, I was like, what are you even talking about? Who's Laurel? It was interesting to me. So basically, like a laurel is an accomplishment that you've already completed that you still keep inflated in your present life, even though it's part of your past. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes. And that could be anything. Like that could go back to the guy who was the captain of the football team in his high school years, but he's still playing on that in his college years or in his adult life somehow.
Hmm.
Or the guy who once had a promotion in a big job and then he went to a new job and now
Right.
I'm adequate to this because I did this, but really you're just back at the bottom kind of a thing, right? And you're not willing to accept that. And so that you rest on that and you play it and play it and play it over. And that stuns your growth mindset for success, essentially, because you're closing yourself off to learning and closing yourself off to the willingness to progress in your growth.
And something that you said in that statement really kind of hits home for me, is that it's something that you did in your past, right? And and in your success journey, you're obviously like working towards your future, right? And so if you're stuck between like I'm working towards this future, but I'm tethered to my past, like you're going to get stuck in the present. You're not going to move forward very fast at all. And so you really have to like cut those ties to the old version of yourself because you're not the person that did those things in the past. Like, yes, technically it's the same body, but you've grown, you've developed, you've evolved. And so it's kind of like, what I'm hearing is almost like if you did something, like you said in high school, like you're a football captain of the football team, and you were like this wonderful person, right? Well, when you're in college, like it's a different level of competition. It's a different, it's a different mindset. It's a different level of commitment to that thing. Like a high school player couldn't jump into a senior role of college and just be great at it. Like there's that work that has to go into it, and you're a new version of yourself. And when you get to that senior year of college, as like, maybe you're still the captain of the football team, right? You look back at your high school years and you go like, wow, I can't believe that I thought that that was hard, because look at all I've accomplished since then, right? And so it's almost like this new version of yourself should keep evolving, should keep strengthening off of those foundations that they made in high school. But yeah, of course, a senior in high school would look back and be like, well, high school is actually kind of easy because I've done all this other stuff. And so if you're still holding that high school stature at such a high esteem as an adult, or maybe you go into the NFL after that, and it's like, oh well, when I was in high school as the captain, it's like, yeah, but this is the NFL, nobody cares, everybody was the captain of their
Right.
whatever in high school. Like, I want to know how you are now, and you should always keep growing and developing and maturing in those qualities, letting go of the old habits, because you're not the same person that you were in high school or in college or after college, in this hypothetical example kind of a thing.
Right.
So it's almost like a laurel from the past. It's like, yes, that was great in that present time while you were doing it, but what have you done since then? How have you grown? And it kind of also reminds me of like political platforms where like we do all these things and we tell everybody what we've done, to get into that political platform. And then when you get in the political platform, there's all those promises that you make. And it's like, well, I don't care about what you did to get onto the platform. I want to know about the action steps you're going to take moving forward. Right. And
Right.
those are
Right.
going to show how you are as a person and that action that you take and develop. So yeah, so I like that you brought that up right away, because it's really easy to get stuck in the past. And sometimes it can be good to take a step back into the past and remember, like, to check yourself. You're like, remember, you have done challenging things. Those things were very challenging then. You've grown as a person, so this should be nothing, like
Right. And you shouldn't forget about them either, but
you
you don't
honor
have
the
to live
memories,
on them,
but you
right?
don't use them as like
You
the,
don't use them
you
as your
know,
excuse in everyday life. You just grow
right.
past them. You just, okay, it
You
was
don't
a
wear them on your
memory.
sleeve.
Right, right. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. I brought that up right away just because that's one thing that stuns a lot of people.
Well, and I think
And
that's a level of self-pride that we have to let go of too, almost, because, you know, just
sure.
because you have accomplished things, those are good things, but, who are you today? Who are you today? And focusing on that present person and the goals and the visions you have for yourself, and establishing today who you are without that
Right.
pride. And it's good to have
And
a little self-pride. It keeps us motivated, but
yeah,
keep it in
and that
check.
definitely keeps us in the direction of where we want to go, like that keeps us in the present as well, because you could be like, oh well, yeah, that's what I did, but here now, like you said, you have to know what you're doing now. You have to be in the present and learn and grow from what you're doing right now, um which is kind of where I want to go
Mhm.
off of the laurel thing, and kind of dig into the origins of being in the present and how you get there,
Absolutely.
because there's a process to that, just like a process to anything. And if we really take it back and look at the origins of what it means to be successful, and we go way, way back to what it is, really, it starts with a thought, right? We have to go back to the thought process, and being able to um, be aware of our thoughts. And that's where success ultimately starts. And that's where it starts between the person who wants to progress and the person who just wants to be comfortable and stay in those laurels, right? So you have the guy that wants to stay there, and then you have the guy that wants to choose to be different. And that's a choice, and that's a thought process. Well, I just thought of something better Now I have an interest in this. Okay, well, that interest, I'm thinking more about it. Now it becomes a desire. And now the desire turns into the creation, right? And that's essentially how success is originated. And you have to be able to take it back to that point so that way you can be self-mastered in your thought process to say, I'm going to stay consistent in this. I'm going to be disciplined in this forward progress of whatever it is that you, the listener, wants to do. So, like for example, if you want to be the best mechanic in in your city, well, what is that? That started as a thought. Well, my thought is mechanics, and I want to be the best. Okay, well, how do I do that? That's the interest, right? How is that going to happen? Well, I'm going to have to learn and educate myself and work on the cars. Okay, well, there's that desire to go out and look for something to work on. And that essentially becomes the creation of your thought. You're now
Absolutely.
creating the project. You're going to find the car, you're working on it, you're learning the abilities to fix that car and bring it back to life. And that's your starting point, and that's what you have to learn to master inside yourself before you can move forward in any of the other processes, because
And the other
it's a whole
elements.
process, right? The other
Yeah.
elements. Success is an element of processes.
Well, I think success is the results of
The of
really good
right.
habits, really
The
good habits
it's
and clarity in our life. And when I was hearing you talk, I was thinking about, how you're talking about the thought turns into this and that. And it's kind of came across to me, as a personal mission statement, because when you write out a mission statement, it's like, what are you doing? Who are you doing it for? And how are you going to accomplish that? Right. And it's almost like for yourself, you're like, okay, what do I want for myself? How am I going to make this happen? And who am I going to serve in this process?
right. Yeah, and that's what success through anything is. Let's use business, as an example. If you want to be successful in a business, well, now you have to think about what that business is, create that passion inside of you, the desire to go out and sit down and write out a business plan, write out the materials you need, write out the prices it's going to take to get that, and then
Right.
write out,
But
the
you can
real
even
estate and all that.
you can even
But
have a personal mission statement though with like a workout
oh yeah,
plan
oh yeah,
too.
for sure,
Like,
workout
how am I
or
going to do this?
anything.
What is it going to look like? And
Yeah,
how is it going to serve me? Or like, who am I going to serve in the process? Because
and
even with the diet change where we want to eat healthier, it's like, okay, well, if I eat healthier, I'm going to have more energy, and who you get to serve in the process. Because we're here to serve people, in life. Like we're here to have a good life, but we're also here to serve people. So, even if you start eating healthier, you're like, okay, well, then I'll have more energy. If I have more energy, I can do this thing with my kids. If I do this thing with my kids, then I can involve my friends. If I involve my friends, and then it's a ripple effect.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, success is different for everybody. Success could be as simple as dieting or be running $100 million company. It could be
Hmm.
anything. It could be taking your kids on to more picnics successfully, because some people don't get to do that. It all depends on how you view success. But in order to make success happen, it goes back to the origins of
Hmm.
that one thought.
And I think having that clarity as that first thought comes in, you take that thought, like you said, you develop it. I kind of just wanted to plug in that mission statement thing because sometimes people have a thought,
Absolutely.
but they don't know what to do with it. And so, taking that thought and being like, okay, what can I do with it? How am I going to do this? Who is it? Who's going to be impacted by this, and just getting that clarity for yourself can be a really big motivating factor, because like once it's written down, once you see it, once you've done that inner work to just write out those couple sentences, now it's become a tangible thing in your life. Now it's become, not just a thought, but there's been a slight action taken to making that first step happen, right?
Right.
And it becomes, and then after that it develops into something, even more. And I think for me, the reason that I kind of stated that was, or probably a projection of myself too, because I get a lot of great ideas. I get very excited about them, but I spend a lot of my time in life lacking clarity on how to get started, and whether I'd be like resting on a laurel, be like, well, I already know how to do this, so I can skip these steps and not start in this project from the beginning, but jump to step 3 or 4 because I've already done that before. But that doesn't apply. So it's a different project back in the day. If I decided to start, again, dieting or something like that, like I can't just suddenly, overhaul my diet in one day. Like my system would go into shock. It's a transition. You got to start at the baby steps, and you got to keep, doing the due diligence from step 1 every time. In chiropractic, because for those listeners out there, like I'm also a chiropractor, we always talk about going back to the basics, going back to the basics. If you don't have the fundamentals down, if you don't have the basics down, then it doesn't matter how impressive your like extra techniques are if you suck at the basics. You got to be good at the basics. And so in each project, in each new venture, in each success journey, you got to start at the basics, build that solid foundation, gain that clarity, and turn that thought into its first action. And when you do, it's very thrilling. And when you have a solid foundation to go off of, it'll force you to stay more present because you're not thinking of the past version of yourself that already skipped steps, and you're not thinking of the future version of yourself that is trying to figure out how to make up for those steps you skipped. Like you have to stay present. You got to start at step 1, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how much your pride gets in the way and says, I've already done that. That was like, great. Well, then you can do it again,
Right. And then once you learn to control and stay consistent with your thought process on your area of success, then you must learn the action steps. So after you get all the rest of that down, you must be able and willing to choose action to push forward with those little wins, because like they say, success is the accumulation of little, smaller wins. So your daily wins add up to become big successes. So that's another thing to keep in mind as well. And the only way you're going to get that is by taking action, because he who does something does more than someone who doesn't, right? Isn't it?
Yeah. That reminds me of 2 different analogies I kind of want to tie in together. One's going to be kind of an emotional one, for those listeners who lead with their emotions a lot, because I get it. I've been that person, and at times I still am that person. But another one's a little bit more practical, because it's kind of like the small, consistent actions. I've talked about this before on different podcasts and other things like that, about like going out and like chopping down a tree, take a hack or 2 at it every day with your axe, and then you go back inside. And, for months you do this, like it's a huge tree. For months you go out there, you just take a couple whacks at it. What your neighbors see isn't you going out there every day and hacking at the tree. What they see is timber day, where you're like, oh my gosh, you took down that tree. That must have taken forever. And it's like, yeah, actually I've been working on it for months. No kidding. I never knew, like kind of a thing. But now they have this tree clearing and you're building a tree house on it. Right. And so, for me also, so coming into like an emotional example for people, because everybody hears things in a different way. I like Jay Shetty and his quotes on any social media platform. He's everywhere. But he always talks about those consistent small actions in a relationship, provide trust, stability, consistency, all that kind of stuff. And it's the small gestures that matter more than the grand gestures. And if you take that and kind of apply it to yourself, especially if you're somebody who struggles with like self-love or confidence or, any of those kind of things, you can almost take this as like an example, like as an opportunity to show yourself self-love. Like I can show up for myself consistently, put in the actions, take the works, do those small gestures in this success origin that I would like. And at the end, not only will I have success, but I'll have learned trust, confidence, and self-love along the way, because you do those small things every day and you don't let yourself quit.
Absolutely. 100%. And another thing that's very important with learning self-mastery is breathing. I don't talk about this enough, or
You
do
don't,
I?
you really don't.
No, I don't. I should. I used to, but very important thing is breathing. Like learning, if you can learn to, and I should have started off with this, is when you can learn to change your breathing techniques and control the breathing techniques, that's essentially the first step, right? That's the first step, is learning to breathe. That's when the ideas come. That's when, that's when the whole process begins. So breathing is a big one as well. And I guess we should have started with that, but hey, better late than never. And I just wanted to throw that in there. So
Well, and I'm going to take the breathing example onto more of a physiological level, right?
yeah, dude,
Because
go for it.
when you take that deep breath, when we first met and were friends, I struggled with a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotional reactions, all this kind of stuff. And you just be like, Carly, just breathe. Carly, breathe. Like, breathe. And I'd be like, I need to call you and I need to talk about something for 30 minutes and get an answer. And you'd let me talk about 2 minutes and you'd be like, just breathe. And I was like, oh my gosh, you just saved me 28 minutes of my life. Because it works, but having that solitude in the breath. And it took you multiple times before it finally clicked. And before because it wasn't easy at first to learn to take deep breaths and to breathe and to process stuff in a way that was productive, right? Because what happens physiologically when we take a deep breath, we're expanding our lungs, we're having more conscious awareness of our physical body, we're increasing our oxygen flow, we're alkalizing our body, which allows us to reduce acid load in our system, which helps reduce inflammation. And having that oxygen helps repair tissues and muscles and all kind of stuff, and as well as increased oxygen in the brain. Like, there's so many things that happens when we take a deep breath, as well as getting rid of that extra CO2 and like toxic air out of our system. And so, I mean, that's just physiological, but as a meditative practice, if you take a deep breath, like if you're having anxiety or, you have that first thought, that origin of success, you're like, what is that? And if you think about that in your brain, you close your eyes and you take a deep breath and you imagine your breath going up into your brain, taking that thought and then breathing it deeply, into your body, you exhale and your breath goes up into your brain and you collect that thought. And then you take a nice deep inhale. And with each deep inhale, you put it in different parts of your body. You put it into your throat, your heart, your limbs, your everything. Now your brain has made a physical connection to not only this thought that started as like just a fleeting thought, it has now become an intentional embodiment within our body. Now our body is like, oh, hey, this thing is happening, right? Now I know that this is going to be something that I'm going to pursue out, because when I thought it, health entered my body. As a chiropractor, we talk about rewiring the system all the time and teaching the body what healthful habits are and not unhealthful habits. And so taking that thought and making it a healthful habit, because when you do that with the deep breath, you're telling your body, hey, when I had this thought, my oxygen increased, my body calmed down, I reduced toxins in my system, I was more alkalized. This is something I can trust. This is something that's good for me. And so when you have that first original thought, taking that deep breath and doing an immediate couple, like 3 to 5 breaths, deep breaths, letting it imagine through your systeming, and then breathing it out and releasing it into the universe for it to start its process and attracting the things into your life to make that start happening. That breath, that origin is truly going to be a part of the first step. That's taking a thought and turning it into immediate action, and then also releasing it to a call to action to the universe when you exhale it and release it from your body.
Yeah,
not
totally.
not to nerd out on you for a quick second.
Which I love. I love it. I love that. Yeah. And here I'm just like, oh yeah, just breathe. And you're like, let's break it
let's
down, which is
let's
good
dive
because
into that.
because
Yeah.
that's I'm just like, just breathe. I'm like Wim Hof. Wim Hof is always just breathe, motherfucker. And I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, that's right. Just breathe. Jump in the water. Let's do it.
Well, and
So
having been somebody who's, struggled with severe anxiety in the past, you tell somebody with extreme anxiety to just breathe. My first initial response was fuck off. Like, you
right.
don't understand, And so hopefully that helps people, because whenever you start something new, there's some precaution, and some, anxiety for
Those
some
growing
individuals,
pains.
those growing pains. And so when people don't know the how to implement it in a healthy way, it can be challenging for them. So hopefully
Right.
that will help them, lay that first step in that first growing pain and making it a healthful habit for them in their origin of success so they can truly succeed in the way that their divine purpose unfolds, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you have to take it up a little more extreme. Like for me, for instance, I read it in the books, I've listened to the Wim Hofs, and I've tried, I tried to just do it by learning through books and audios and all that. But for people like me, um, I needed something a little more physical and more challenging to kick my butt into gear. And so some of you may resonate on this. You can read everything you want in the book, but the real life application has to be the action, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my thing was is I was having a hard time taking action because I would read this stuff, I would think about doing it, and I'd say, okay, but I don't know what to do. So
Mm-hmm.
action can come and develop from physical fitness, something I learned pretty recently through a program that I put myself through. That physical fitness is a little more enduring. And when you push yourself beyond your own limits with this physical fitness, you're going to learn very quickly what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. And then you're going to be able to implement that into your beginnings, like your breath work, because you're going to need to stay consistent in your breath work in order to continue with your reps or whatever you're doing, the running or whatever physical exercise you're doing. And by physically exhausting yourself, you're learning to you're training your brain to do different things that you're not used to, and you're being comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Working out is really uncomfortable for a lot of people, and it was for me as well. And when I was put through a maximum physical expectancy, it was like I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, to no, this is happening, I'm gonna do this, I'm already there now, this is just the journey, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just gonna push myself even harder and harder and harder. And sometimes some of us need that in order to unlock those doors to success and origins.
Well, and I
And that's what
think
I needed.
one thing there that I love that how you articulated that, because basically what you're talking about is rewiring your limbic system,
Right.
and you're gaining confidence. I think we mentioned last time that, you have the mental confidence when you're thinking about it, all the books that you've read, but then until you put the mental and the physical together, you don't really have that confidence, right? And I think that's
Right.
where people struggle with like imposter syndrome a lot, where they're just like, well, mentally, I know all the things, but I haven't done the thing yet. And so you're kind of like, teetering, and then you put yourself in those situations where you can build that, mental muscle, physical muscle, however, whatever the thing is that you're working on. For you, it was physical fitness, and but the thing that I really liked about what you said is you could hear the transition of, well, I think I can do this. Well, no, I can't do this. Okay, well, I've already done this. Now this is just the process. Because what I heard there was you training yourself to trust yourself no matter the outcome. Like, no matter, like, you already know the outcome. Now you just have to trust yourself to get to the end. And I think a lot of us, second guess our decisions. We have a tendency to people please. We have a tendency to care about what others think, all those kind of things in our origin, right? And you got to scrap
Absolutely.
that, because at the end of the day, nobody cares. At the end of the day, you get to decide what your decisions are for your life. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter how it impacts others if you're making like bad choices and stuff. But if you're getting healthier, you're going through the growing pains, and you're willing to put yourself out there and to do the origin of success in whatever topic you're working on in your life, and are brave enough to do that, like, fucking kudos to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because by the end of it, Joshua, did you trust yourself physically, mentally, emotionally so much more after that experience? Or
Absolutely.
yeah,
100%. And it's not even a it's like a night and day difference. It's
truly.
because what I went from was having a lack of confidence in myself, and And like these limiting beliefs is what it
Well, and
was.
what I
And
saw with you was a sense of lacking. You're like,
right,
well, I've not proved to myself that I can X, Y, or Z, either mentally,
exactly.
physically, or emotionally. Like, I don't know that I can handle it. And I saw that struggle where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but all I know is I'm
Yeah.
prepping. It was kind of like a blind faith. You're like, I know I'm going into this program. I know this is going to expect a lot from me physically as well as mentally. I have no idea what that's going to look like. And I saw you like, I'm going to keep pushing every day. I don't know how the success is going to work out, but I'm going to keep pushing myself every day as much as I can. And those mental shifts over, those several weeks leading up to your program that you entered into, and then even the day when you were ready to leave for it, you're like, no, I'm not going to go, jokingly, because of course you were going to go.
Right.
But then at the end of it, just seeing you for the first time, knowing that you did it, the amount of self-love you had for yourself, and like, I did the thing, I'm so proud of myself, I trusted myself, I got through it, I breathed through it, I supported others through it, like I did the thing, and that confidence and that, that charisma that you had, you just held yourself to a higher standard because your limbic system completely rewired. And for some people, if you're going to be starting a new thing that doesn't require physical activity, it might be good to start like a success or two at a time, where you're like, okay, mentally, I'm going to start a new job, but it's not a very physically demanding job, but it's going to expect more from me mentally. Well, match that physically, then maybe start some sort of a new program or up your training or whatever to match that, because mentally we have so much energy every day that we have to expend. And if we're not being challenged mentally, then we have to burn it physically. And if you're trying to really push yourself to grow, matching that mental energy expenditure with a physical energy expenditure is going to exhaust you, but it's going to force your body to physically change epigenetically into a better version of yourself. And so,
Absolutely.
for those who don't have like a physical demanding experience that they want to do, maybe add something in that's going to challenge you. And it doesn't have to be, I'm going to go to the gym and beat my muscles to death until I pass out at the floor. It could be even just like, I've never tried yoga before, I'm going to try yoga. Or I've never tried, archery before, something that's just going to use your muscles, it doesn't
Right.
have to be exhausting, but there's something that's going to challenge your muscles in a different way than what they're used to.
Yeah, I mean, you could go from sitting down on the couch to standing up, sitting down to standing up. Do that 10 times. And it keeps your mind clear. Like when you work out, that's the thing. The human body is designed as a machine. The more you use it, the better it gets. And when you don't use it, it just becomes stagnant. So when you use it, you become clear. Like your blood is flowing. You're recycling your blood. It's renewing every,
You're
you know,
draining
every
your lymphatics.
you're draining your lymphatics. You're just redoing everything. When you sit around and you stay stagnant, that damages not just your body but your mind as well, because your mind stays stagnant. You want to be up and moving, you want to be walking, you want to be just moving around doing stuff. Go garden or go for a walk, take your dogs out, take your kids to the park, do just anything really, clean the house more, or something that keeps you moving and active, because
Yeah.
an
Or for
active
people
body is an
who
active
have,
mind.
yeah, or even people who have physical limitations, it could just be something of like moving your and stretching your arms, or,
Yeah.
pushing against the wall. I, as a chiropractor, like I love teaching people different stretches where they can use like door frames or walls, to like, just, you can use that isometric training
Yeah.
to have that little bit of resistance that impacts you on a scale where you'll be sore the next day if utilized appropriately.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so, absolutely. And Joshua, I know both of us really like nature analogies, and I've heard you say this before, so I'm just going to go ahead and use it right away, stealing your thunder. But, thinking about the body and the mind as like a river versus like a pond, if you
Absolutely.
you have that clear flowing, calm, cool, crisp water with that fresh breeze where you can just see the dragonflies and, the lily pads floating down the water. I guess the lily pads wouldn't be on a river, but you know what I mean. And just like really a calm, cool, crisp, ever flowing, clear water. right? And the naturally filtering itself through the rocks, all those great stuff. That's kind of how you want your brain and your mind to work, where you're just constantly flowing, you're constantly learning, you're constantly, and this could be challenging for people who are looking for themselves to feel like enough. It's like, oh, I don't know enough, I don't know enough, I don't know. That's not what I'm saying, but just be like, oh, I have an interest, how do I grow on that? Oh, I have an interest now even more, how do I keep expanding that interest? Where a stagnant pond or a puddle of water or something like that, it builds toxins, it builds smell, it builds odors, and attracts leashes and all sorts of things you don't want. You know what I mean? And like,
Absolutely.
you just don't want those things in life. And so, keeping your mind, keeping your
It'll get
body
you sick.
flowing, thinking of it as a flowing river. Exactly. Because I mean, we've had this experience with my dog where there's a stagnant pond near our house. He drank out of it and his eye swelled up the next day. And I was like, ew. And it's like, well, the bacteria from the pond probably made him sick, And that happens with our mind. If we keep our mind stagnant, or a lot of people will be like, well, I watch game shows or I do crossword puzzles or I do something, I keep my mind stimulated. I do Sudokus. That's great. You can do those things, but your mind is also a muscle, like your brain's a muscle, right? And so it's going to get used to doing the same thing over and over again. So I always challenge people is like, well, if you're doing that, switch it up, do something different for a while. You can still like doing Sudoku or something that keeps you mentally stimulated, but maybe try something different. If you like only one type of music, maybe try a different type of music for a while, just for like a
Yeah.
week, give your brain that like, oh, what's this change in life, and get it engaged, get it thinking, get it flowing. Because the more we keep routine is good in our life and our daily patterns to have stability. And when we have that, it gives us the privilege to mentally challenge ourselves in other areas. And, crossword versus Sudoku is a low risk situation, but, you can start there and build up something different
Or you could even take a different direction driving
to
home,
work. Yep.
or to work. I go this way every single day. Well, maybe I should take this way. That'll build those new neural links in your brain to kind of keep your brain healthier. And that's essentially what we're after. We're after your brain to reprogram and on a subconscious level and just change the way you think about things.
Because
And
bringing that back to the origin of success, if you can allow yourself that privilege to experience the same thing in a different way, then you don't know what those small changes in your life will provoke in your brain and in your thought patterns. Because now maybe you're seeing an opportunity that had been in front of you, but because you always looked at it the same way, you didn't notice it. But now you did something different over here. And then when you come back to that same opportunity, you're noticing it. And then that thought comes in, you're like, oh, I could take that opportunity, and then I could change this, or I could change my passion into a hobby that's been a hobby for years. And now I could make money out of this, like you can do so many things just from rewiring in one area. It has such a big ripple effect in other areas and how we view our life and approach situations.
absolutely, I love that.
So yeah, no, this was really great. I really liked how this developed. I feel like there was a lot of really good tidbits and takeaways for all types of listeners.
Yeah, and essentially it's once you start getting into the routine of doing awareness, self-awareness, then you have to turn it. That goes back to like where we were talking about the first episode where discipline comes in, consistency and discipline. Once you get to that point where you can be self-aware and you say, okay, I'm going to take control of my thoughts, I'm going to be careful of what I think, I'm going to only project this such of this what I want, you can then turn that into a routine, which then turns into the discipline, and then the discipline turns into habits, right? And then habits turn into a character, right? And now it's part of you. Now you're doing it every day. That's like why that's like working out. Like working out becomes addicting after a while. It's really hard at first. Those first 3 months are the hardest to get past. Once you get past it, it actually feels really good. You start seeing the results of what you're doing, and then you start becoming more addicted to it. And then you have to do it. And then when you don't do it, you
It
kind of
feels weird.
feel
You kind of
you
miss it
feel
in your
weird,
life.
right? You feel
Yeah.
slummy, you feel like, oh, I'm aggravated. I don't know what this anxiety is. Well, that's you skipping what has now become your habit, your daily routine, your discipline, and your lifestyle. So,
Well, and there was something that you said there that made me think of a couple of different things, but when you start working out, it releases good endorphins into your body, and it produces, it promotes health, right? And a lot of times when people are addicted to cortisol, like addicted to chaos, addicted to stress, addicted to whatever, working out is a great way to switch that adrenaline that they would typically get from cortisol, like that angst that they have to burn out of their system. And so they get anxiety and overthink and do all that kind of stuff, because overthinking happens a lot because we're trying to burn the energy that physically we could burn the energy physically, and then mentally we won't be overthinking, right? And so for people, transitioning into doing something positive, and you feel that withdrawal, now you're feeling withdrawal of a good thing and not like an unhealthy thing. And so, I like that you were talking about whatever you said that provoked that in my ADHD brain. That was like taking the cortisol, taking the change and making it into a good change. And then having that be a productive change. So then when you find yourself missing something, you're missing good habits, not unhealthy habits.
right. And it doesn't have to be working out either, like we were talking about earlier. Like I like to use working out a lot because that's what helps me. That's what kicks me in the butt and makes me go and gets my mind going and makes me flow. Other things, I people do crocheting, people do knitting, people do drawing, people do whatever, skateboarding, biking,
Mhm.
anything that makes you essentially
Extreme laundry folding.
extreme laundry folding, anything that gets you
Just
up
using your
and at 'em,
muscles. Just
using your
using your
muscles,
muscles.
using your mind, keeping calm and breathing. It'll change the way you do things, and the change the perspective on which you look at this stuff too. Like when you're just like, oh, I gotta do laundry, I gotta fold laundry. No, you get to do laundry and you get to fold laundry. It's a good thing. Use that as a good thing, a positive, turn it from a negative to a positive and say, I get to do my laundry. I get to fold it and make it look nice. I get to put it away nice. You know,
I'm so glad that you said that. I'm so glad that you said that, because I was just thinking, I was like, well, that's kind of ties into last week where we talked about that you start with a motivation and it turns into a habit, right? But, I shared with you recently that TikTok thing where it was this guy who was like, I dress nice every day because it gives me opportunities that dressing like a schmuck doesn't,
right.
and,
Absolutely.
and so having pride in yourself, especially at the origin, when I started doing, a specific internship that I started, they gave me a checklist because, like, if you want to reach the goal that you're going to get when you finish this internship and start with this program, then you need to have that mindset starting off. And one of those mindset checklists was, like, to not to be like TMI or whatever, but it was like one of the things I was shocked because it was like, get rid of any old underwear you have, get new nice underwear, get your environment clean, get your bedroom in a space where it feels like something you want to wake up to. Make sure that your house is reflecting how you want to be, at the end of this internship. Start developing those habits now, and it was like, what a weird thing to start with, but I was like, but then at the same time, I was like, it took me a couple of weeks to be like, that's not something that I need to do to feel successful, and I started folding my towels differently. I started putting things in my cupboards differently. I started noticing clutter that I didn't really need in the house anymore and got rid of it. Like, I just started minimizing and simplifying my life around me, because as I was trying to develop strength in my mindset, I was noticing that I didn't have this need for all the clutter in my life, or the old things in my life, and I started transitioning things in my life in a way. And kind of coming back to the food stuff too, like I recently just went on a trip and I felt so empowered by that trip that I came back and I started cooking meals every day instead of doing like leftovers and easy stuff that was just like microwave, and that was like, wow, I actually am looking forward to doing this every day. And not only can I cook every day, but I can make that quality time with my kids where I'm like, hey, come, let's talk about your day while I'm cooking. And then we'll all sit down and have a meal together. That way we're not having the conversation at mealtime because my kids eat in like 5 minutes. It's like, well, I know nothing about your day, but it just started changing my mindset. And it was interesting because doing those small things in my house, like closing the cabinet doors, making sure the shower curtains pulled all the way at the end of the bed, like all the things where it's just like when you walk into the room and it's clean and it's orderly and it's tidy, that does something to a person's brain
Yeah.
because those small habits are part of that muscle that you build in your origin of success. Because, to be a successful person, we often think about like, oh, I want the big house, I want the nice clothes, I want the nice car. Well, you don't go from having, for my example, a hoarded household into having like one of those kind of places. It takes time, it takes emotional effort, it takes this and that. And as I was going through these processes of decluttering, moving things, getting rid of stuff, letting go of all these distractions in my life, I found I had more time to do the things I actually wanted to do because I wasn't spending the time cleaning, I wasn't spending the time organizing, I wasn't spending the time being like, where does this belong? There's no space for it. Having stuff in your house all have a place where it belongs. Like people always told me that, but I'm like, but that's what buckets are for, right? And but then truly like getting stuff out of the doom boxes and into places where it's like, okay, I don't need 17 towels. I just need 5. I pick my 5 favorite ones. I get rid of the rest. And now it's like, ooh, now I have a towel like shelf. That's exciting. And it looks good and it's not like falling out. And those are those mental muscles where you just start making those small changes in your physical environment right now that don't cost anything. And it really, really, they say in the military, they make you make your bed right away. And, my ex-husband used to say this, he would be like, you make your bed right away in the morning, because if nothing goes right at the end of the day, you at least get to like climb into a clean bed, like a clean, freshly made bed, and start the day over. And I was like, that really makes a difference. And so many people don't make their bed every morning, like there's a lot of people that don't.
No, they
And,
don't.
but walking into that where you're like, oh, wow, their bed is made and their pillows are fluffed. You're like, oh, dang, that is very relaxing, because there's no external clutter. When there's no external clutter, there's no mental clutter, and then it frees up space for you to do that. And I challenge our listeners this week, whatever their origin of success that they're working on, or, maybe they haven't thought that they could change anything in their life, so I invite them to think of one thing that they could change in their life. That could be a small thing, could be a big thing, could be that thing that they've been sitting on for a long time and haven't had the courage to start because they're like, oh, what would people think if I started doing this? Nobody cares. What do you think if you started doing it? How is your life going to be different? Are you going to be happy with yourself? And if you're going to be happy with yourself, guess what? That's going to ripple effect into everybody else. And then everybody else is going to be happy you did that thing,
Right.
and those
Exactly.
who don't aren't your real friends,
And they shouldn't be in your life.
Exactly. And sometimes that's the clutter that we have to get rid of too, unfortunately, which could be a different episode. But, I invite the listeners this week to come up with, an origin of success that they want to start working on, set a time frame, be like, hey, it could be something small where it's like in the next 6 weeks, I want to consistently have showed up for myself in this way, and build that habit. And, and maybe have a secondary one. You're like, okay, after 3 weeks of showing up for myself, I'm going to add this supplemental one in. Maybe your challenge is like, I'm going to drink water every day because we don't just run on coffee and soda, and so like maybe you're like, I'm going to start drinking water, the appropriate amount of water. And for those of you who don't know, it's typically your weight divided in half and that amount of ounces, so that's about how much water you should be drinking every day. And, so you start drinking the water every day. You're like, hey, 3 weeks into drinking water, the appropriate amount of water every day. Now with electrolytes, so it actually hydrates your body the way it's supposed to. Now, 3 weeks in, I'm going to start, adding in a healthy breakfast, and because you're going to have that health established in your body, you create a supplemental one to add in. And then before you know it, 3 weeks after that, you're adding in another one and another one and another one. And 6 weeks turns into 6 months, which turns into 6 years. And now, hey, look at you, you're doing pretty great,
For
So,
real.
but for reals,
Yeah. That's the
And
way it works.
so I challenge people to come up with something or to take that risk on themselves this next week and to see what it is they come up with. I'd love to hear what, people got from this episode today and those mental shifts and that, how that origin, the struggles with that origin, because it could
Definitely.
be challenging. And, it's one of those things where you got to just do it. You got to rip that Band-Aid off and just like cannonball into the water,
Well, there's a saying, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's where true growth and true success begins, like if you can be comfortable being uncomfortable, you're gonna be able to do anything. So
Mhm.
that's another, we could do like another episode of conquering fear, and that's part of that. um
Absolutely. I already have
and
76 thoughts to go with that one sentence
right,
right there.
yes. So another episode we can dig down into that, but you know keep that in mind anytime you feel and you feel like, oh, I don't know about this, or you get anxious about it, or you feel that lack of confidence creeping into your mind. Just remember that you want to be uncomfortable, and you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable in order to notice that and walk through it. In order to get past it, you have to be willing to accept it.
Well, and they
And
say bravery is knowing that something is, dangerous or whatever, and you do it anyways, right?
right.
And to tie that into an applicable real life situation, kind of reminds me of the new life version of Beauty and the Beast, where at the end she's just like, the dad's like, "You can't go, Belle. It's dangerous." And she goes, "Yes, yes, it is. But are you coming with me? Because I'm gonna do it anyways, and accepting, because a lot of times we're in denial of that discomfort, right? Like we're like, oh, well, it's, so many people are like, oh, we don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable or offended or whatever. And it's like, yeah, actually, we kind of do, because that's where brilliant things come to play. And so, accepting like, all right, I already know going into this is going to be uncomfortable, but I've committed to it. I'm going to do it anyways, And so
Right.
just going into that with a mindset like, hey, and I can't tell you how many times during a growth process I have fallen apart and have cried and had to let things go because I'm like, I didn't expect this in the growth process. But, as you're using your body more, as you're changing, as you're challenging different muscles, those muscle memories surface. They're going to get brought to the surface. And so if somebody's doing something new, doing their origin of success, trying this out, doing that 3-week challenge into a 6-week challenge, if emotions surface, it's okay because they're being released, And so just know, I always had to tell myself when I had those really big emotional moments, being like, this is part of the letting go in the growth process. This is the breaking the old shell, the familiar, and creating a new healthy familiar, because if I stay here, I'm not going to break through the surface and I'm going to be a seed dead in the ground. And I want to be a blossom plant, and you got to break through that surface to let
Right.
those little sproutlings grow.
That's right. Breaking through that surface is the beginning part,
And a
and
lot of
then
times people are going to put a lot of shit on that ground, which is great fertilizer and should just motivate you more.
here comes the compost. Yeah. Just
Exactly.
keep throwing it on. Just keep throwing it on.
Yeah.
Makes me stronger,
I
you know?
thrive under criticism.
And that's the way you got to look at it.
Yeah, because it's only going to help, so getting that mental shift in the origin, like knowing going into it, this is going to be uncomfortable. Things are going to surface, but I am capable of meeting those challenges because I know that I'm going to be brave and have confidence at the end of this
And discover courage.
and discover
And
courage and just be a better, like real impressive version of yourself. And it starts with
and
one little
that,
change.
yeah, and one little thought will change everything. And that will be your origins. You breathe in a new thought so that you can change your entire outcome, your entire reality. And that's how it works. And there's a lot more that goes into that, the planning and all the other stuff. But the origins of it is breathe it into existence
Mhm.
and and nourish it and walk with it and run with it and just enjoy the
And
process
enjoy the
and
process.
trust the
And
process.
yes, trust the process so much, because any type of success, the outcome was even better than I could imagine when I let go of control, learned to be present in the moment, and just trusted the process. Be like, you know what? I don't know how this is going to work out. Just kind of like you did with your challenge. Every day I saw you be like, I have no idea what I'm getting into. I have no idea what is going to happen to me. I don't know how I'm going to be when I get out of this, but I'm just going to trust the process. And all I know today, I can do this to prepare myself for that process. And, to see that courage grow as you started seeing results in yourself, physically with your working out and your regiments that you were doing, I saw your confidence grow, and then, just get maximized during your program. And then coming out with even more, your confidence was maximized. All those seeds that you planted in those weeks following up, really took root, really grew, really were nurtured, and, were really watered really well.
They
And
were watered pretty well. They were.
and you came out so much more confident, and had that courage. And that
I
was just
got
a
my fire
beautiful.
back, is what it was.
Yes, because sometimes we forget who we are. We forget who we are, and we have to do things that are challenging to remind us, because sometimes, not to keep going, we'll wrap this up, but I always found that I would be people pleasing, and I'd have to stop and ask myself, I'd be like, is this even something that I like, or is this just a habit I did because of one person who influenced me 10 years ago? Oh my gosh, I don't actually like this, and I've been doing it for 10 years, like,
For real.
sometimes you got to check yourself, like, does this serve the version of myself I am today and the person I want to be moving forward, and whatever that success that I'm working towards? And if it doesn't, it's okay to let it go. It is
Yeah.
okay to let stuff go, to move forward in life. You cannot stay tethered to the past if you want to excel into the future. So,
Yeah. And if you need a mental vision of how you get past something like resting on your laurels or anxiety, imagine anxiety being, I don't know, an annoying figure of yourself that you just duct tape to a chair and poke with a stick every now and again and say, no, you don't have access to me anymore, do you? you know, like, like you
well,
got to be
you
willing
know,
to change something in order
Joshua,
to get that result.
speaking of anxiety, you told me one time that anxiety is living in the future
Right.
presently. And so if you let go of those future expectations, those future ideations, and so with this example, put your anxious future self in a chair and be like, you can stay there because I'm living presently over here, and this looks pretty good,
Yeah.
and
Same thing with the
it's
past. Same
gonna
thing with the
poke you,
past.
right? But the past is depression, right?
Right.
And so the both of you are going to try to poke you at the stick, and you're like, nope, I'm just gonna, like, it's almost like you're pulling them, in sleds tied to you, and you're like, I'm moving forward up this mountain no matter what. And at some point you just realize, and you just let the sleds go and they slide down the mountain. You're like, I don't need this anymore. And then
That's
you just
right.
feel so liberated. And that's such a great part of
And then
growth.
you'll get up the mountain faster because you don't
Hmm.
have that weight dragging you down.
The weight of the future, or the expectations of the future, or the weight of the past. So yeah, no, this was great. I loved how this, evolved and developed into so many helpful and helpful habits in giving people some tools, some ideas, some relatability in being able to, have the courage to start something for yourself, because nobody's going to do it for you. And you got to wake up one day and just decide, you know what, today's the day I'm going to do that thing.
Absolutely.
And then you wake up
Absolutely.
the next day, you say, okay, today's the day I'm going to do that thing, you know?
Absolutely.
And that thought will continue to grow. You just got to do it one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, one day at a time.
Stay consistent, stay disciplined. Absolutely.
And I can't wait to hear 3 weeks from now, for our listeners to chime in here and be like, oh my gosh, I did this and it was amazing. So come back to this episode and add in, hey, I'm going to try this, and then follow up and be like, this was the results. I love this.
Yeah. I would love to see some of that as well. That would be great.
So absolutely. So do you have any finishing words, or I feel like those were all kind of really good ending tidbits?
Um, yeah, no, I think covered a lot of it. I have some other things that'll probably fit in better with future
Future
episodes, but
episodes. Yeah,
I'll keep
absolutely.
those juicy little tidbits for that.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So, well, until next time, we will see you guys next week on episode 3 with one of those juicy thoughts Joshua's got. Have a great time and good luck starting your origin.